Today on How Not To, we're going to offer up a cautionary tale that we're very intimate with because frankly it's ours. When you're a small business, things can go south on you awfully quickly. Hopefully our story can be one that serves you well and helps you avoid the pitfalls that we made. So hang on, we're going for a ride.
All right. Welcome to Reframe, How Not to F Up Your Business. I'm Johnny, and this is Bryan. And we've been in the industry for going on over 30 years now, and we've run our production company for now in our 22nd year. Bryan, I have to sort of explain why we're here, why we're even doing this podcast, and what the whole purpose of this is. We started to get to know a lot of others who are in this industry who were struggling, and they were struggling in silence. They were feeling pretty much alone. And once you start to talk to them and they start to share some of the things that are going on, you can see their eyes are just opening up going, whoa, they thought they were the only ones that this was happening to, but this is happening to a lot. And so for us to be able to share this story, I think is important because we went to the edge and had to decide if we were going to just go over the edge or if we were going to continue to climb the mountain. And fortunately, we decided to keep climbing the mountain. But I think to set the stage for this whole thing, I think we have to take you back in time just a little bit. Bryan, I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to take you back to that fateful day. It was 2017, so nearly 8 years ago. And what's interesting about 2017 is that it was actually a really great year for our company. We were doing some amazing productions all over the country. We were doing, we traveled to Switzerland to film there for one of our clients. It was just a really great year. But December of that year was a slightly different story. And I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from what happened there, how that year started and how it ended. And it was December. It was, I'd say, probably 2 weeks before the Christmas holiday, before the big winter breaks that we were all going to take.
Right before the Christmas holiday. What a gift. What a gift. Actually, in hindsight, it was a gift, but what a gift.
And so our office was humming. People were getting ready for the holidays. They were getting ready for whatever travel or vacation time they had, going to see their family. We had a very young staff, and so many were planning to travel. There were projects that were being finalized and finished, so editing was happening, the whole nine. It was just a nice festive time. Yeah. And I was sitting at my desk, and I hadn't really been able to sleep for a few nights. And I think, in hindsight, I know why, but our phone rang, and it was our bookkeeper. And as we're planning things like vacations, and we're planning on, what the bonuses were going to be that year, etc., our bookkeeper calls, and I saw it right on the caller ID, and I knew it was not good. And she delivered the news that we were out of cash. And at first I sat there going, it's not possible. Oh, and by the way, payday is that Friday. And here we are getting a call a few days before payday that this was happening. If I could somehow bottle up in a fragrance of what that felt like in that moment, the gut punch that was, what my immediate reaction, the way my body was shaking. I was shaking. I was started to well up a little bit. I think there was something inside of me that almost saw this coming, but I wasn't expecting it to hit that fast. And the first thing you have to do when that happens is you've got an entire team who are getting through things, and you have to let them sort of get through these projects. But I have to now deliver that message to my business partner and tell him that we have to have an emergency meeting that evening with our bookkeeper to discuss what we can do in this situation. Bryan, I'm taking you back to that moment when I deliver that news to you, and I could tell you that what I remember was a lot of frustration, there's a lot of anger, a lot of stress. It was a very stressful moment, but I'd love to. I don't know that I've ever asked you this question, but I'd love to have you take us back there. It's like, what went through your mind at that moment?
Yeah, it's funny. I think all of that, all of the above. But I'll lay it out very quickly. You and I, the one thing we have is mutual respect for each other. You have a very different family home life than I do. We have different responsibilities, etc. And the first reaction is, oh crap, what now? And that creates anger, that creates hostility, it creates all that. But part of it is really, even though it's outwardly aimed, it's inward. I have had a resistance to QuickBooks. So understanding and knowing the finances other than just taking somebody's word for it. And that sounds cold and hard. It's not meant to. But that was a lot of anger towards myself, a lot of frustration. How could I have not seen this coming? Well, it's logical. When you divide up tasks, some of you don't see things coming. But the other thing is, even if you do and you don't really know what you're looking at as a business, you can't. Like, suddenly you're faced with the reality that I thought I knew what was going on. And I think we both went through that in our own ways. So while there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of panic. How am I gonna keep the roof over my family? How am I gonna keep food on the table? How am I gonna continue with this business to help it get through this? I mean, it's all there. It wasn't a run away. It was a, oh crap, get the emotions out because you got work to do. And yeah, I did not let my family see the tears welling up. I did not let them see any of that. So it was a burden I carried, and there's only one person I could speak to about it, and that's you. And so unfortunately, you probably became more of a recipient of that. I probably became more of a recipient of frustration as well. But the thing that we have always had since the beginning is almost an unnaturally healthy respect for each other. And so, I don't think we should have been in business if we didn't have that. I don't think we could have been in business. And I don't think, frankly, there were reasons I didn't have to stick around. And there are probably reasons you didn't have to stick around. But here we are. And we were coming at it after dealing with the gut punch. And it was a gut punch. But I think the anger is more... specifically with time, definitively with time, it's more of what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? How could I have done it? And that comes across in so many different ways. Some people break out in hives, others turn to the bottle, others lash out at one another in different ways. And I will say, like right now, I'm shaking a little bit because I remember how intense those feelings were. But the intensity was, even if it was directed at you, it wasn't. And I hope it never came across as like, oh God, you've ruined us. Because that's not how I felt. It was more just like, damn, why couldn't I have been better at understanding? Why couldn't I have been better at knowing what was going on?
Yeah,
So.
I think that's a great way to frame it. And none of it was ever personal. I think any frustrations that I had, if it came across to you, I think it was just us dealing with those like very intense emotions in that moment because, you know, I think we talked a little bit before recording this, and that, you know, you were mentioning the idea of, you know, you kind of have two families. You have the family at home, which is you're responsible for that, for the home, for your family, for their future, all of that. So all of that kind of comes at you like the floodgates are just open and the dam broke, and it's just all coming at you. So you're having to deal with that, and then you have sort of that second family that you built. If you're anything like us, we built an amazing culture at our company, and we had, you know, to this day, people say that, you know, one of the places that they learned the most was when they worked in our company, and it was just the type of environment that we had, and we like to take care of our people. That becomes another family, and you are responsible for their futures and all of that. So you take that to heart, and so all of these things, all of these emotions are hitting. And then if you're lucky enough to have a business partner like the one I have in Bryan,
And the one I have,
there's also a very deep responsibility that you feel to each other. And if you don't have that, that's a sign that maybe, you know, you have to really come to terms with what type of partnership it is. But ours has always been one of mutual respect. I'm glad you used those words. And also one of mutual responsibility, where for me, when I make any decisions or I'm thinking about something, I think about what is the impact for Bryan, positive, negative, all of those things, because we want this to be for both of us to grow. So that was a really tough weekend, and we're going to spend a little bit of time here because this is important. There are a lot of you out there who maybe are feeling this right now, who are going through a very tough time with your business and might be feeling some of these things right now as well. And these are the things we're going to be touching on through various episodes, is what kind of systems you have in place to prevent this type of late communication and make sure that the relationship you have with your bookkeeper, with your accountant, are of a certain type so that information flows a little bit quicker.
I'll go even further than that. I don't think forget our accountant. I don't think if it was for, and I'm not trying to discount that, but in that emergency moment, I think our bookkeeper, frankly, kept our spirits high. And she so dynamic and I don't think I don't think I could ever say it to her face in a way that would make her believe me fully. But
I have.
Well, I've said it. I just don't know if she believes me fully. But I give a lot of credit to her because coming back and not knowing what I don't know, she always took the time to say, okay, here's where the friction point is. Here's what you need to be keeping in mind. I can't answer that question. You need to go to this or that. But it was always, I think without her, I think I probably would have been more of a mess.
Yeah.
So,
and I
didn't mean to
express, no, it's okay. It's important to say it. And I expressed the gratitude for her because in that moment, that afternoon, she had 2 people coming into her office that were at bottom. And she could have easily just said like, yeah, guys, it's done. I'll help you with the paperwork and call it a day and we'll see you later. But no, she said, no, here's where you are. Here are she was so prepared. Here are the immediate steps that have to be taken. And there were some hard ones. Yeah. Here are the immediate steps. Yeah. If you guys decide that you're moving forward with the business, here are some immediate steps you have to take to the cash that you currently have on hand, how to use it effectively to get you through this little period here. And here are some other steps that have to be taken. And then from there, you guys, let's keep talking about what the next moves are. And we spent, it must have been a couple of hours just hashing out, talking about where we are, a little bit about how we got there. But most of it was really proactive. And I thank her so much for that meeting because that one meeting set the stage for everything that came after. We each walked away with a game plan that we had to start literally that night and into that weekend. We had to start implementing it. And
hitting the phones was first. Hitting the phones.
I mean, when we think about it, right? So we're here. We're here. It's 8 years later. We're here. Yeah. Our business is in such a better place. It is such a different business than what it was starting out. We have a lot more clarity in who we are and what we do and who we do it for and who we want to do it for, more importantly. But to get from that place to where we are now was a lot of work and a lot of growth that had to happen for us in who we were as people. So our personal development, we like to say we had to reframe who we are. We had to reframe what our business was. And we had to reframe what our mission, like what we wanted to accomplish in this world. What were we about? We had to reframe all of that and then put in the work to grow through all of those areas to get to where we are now. And when we think about the fixes, and I'm super excited because there are, if you break it up into like sort of 3 sections of fixes, there's the immediate, like this is where you are. Fix this, fix this shit right now. Yeah. This has to happen above all else. And then there's the, we'll call it like the short-term fixes, like, all right, we've got some breathing room. Let's start to short things up. And then there's the long-term work, which, for some it might happen a little sooner. For us, it really took a lot of time because we went in deep and really fixed a lot of different things. So the long-term fixes I'm seeing a lot of the results of that work for the long term now. But the last thing somebody who's in that hole wants to hear is, chin up. If you just work on yourself, everything will turn out great. Just focus on personal development. They're going to look at you like you're crazy because they need a solution for right now. So we needed immediate solutions. We actually there's an episode we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks or so where it's fully focused on if your business is in that really tight spot, here are some immediate tactics that you can deploy to help on things like cash flow, things on... Yeah. With employees, with clients, all of those different things that can help you to shore up. So I'm really excited about doing that episode in a few weeks. But
I'm very excited, and here's why. When we talk about the immediate, short-term, long-term, it all starts the same way. The idea of that reframe isn't to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's about saying, I'm overwhelmed, look at all of this, and say, no. I just need to figure out what the next step is. And then I need to figure out the step after that. And once you're out of crisis, immediate crisis, you could say, okay, we made it through immediate crisis. I've just looked at the things that are right in front of me. We are now moving on. We're not going to pay off the overwhelming debt or the this or the that. That's not today. Today is, how do I pay my staff? How do I keep the lights on? How do I move from point A to B? How do I service the clients I still have? And what do I do with the knowledge of where I'm at? And by solving the first problem, you can get to the next problem. But you have to look at it very differently than you've run business up until that point. And that is where the key comes from, is you almost go back to the blueprints. Without the foundation, you cannot put up the walls. So if you look at your immediates as, I've got to get the ground ready for the concrete that's coming, then everything else is based on that solid foundation. And I know that sounds silly. We're going to start breaking it down over the next couple of weeks of what happens, where it happens, how it happens. But it's not totally nuking your business. It's basically looking at it and not being overwhelmed by all the noise of every last thing you have to do. So.
Yeah, I think, and when we look at immediate, I think a lot of lost sleep, a lot of late nights. I did have to bring, my family into it and talk about it. I think one of the hardest parts of the whole thing, and this started with our bookkeeper. This was the first thing that she put out. She goes, and she even said, this is going to be really difficult for you guys, but you have to reach out to people. And when you're running a business, you can feel very isolated. You feel very alone. It's a very lonely endeavor.
And
running
protective.
A business.
Very
and
protective.
It can be, if you're kind of guarded and aren't putting yourself out there. Now, it's one of the big reframes, right? We're now part of communities, and we're openly talk about the struggles of production with others who are in production, and it's a very different world for us today, and that's, we're going to show you the leap that we made. But back then we were kind of siloed in terms of how we kind of kept everything in, and now we had to turn and admit to people that we needed help. Very hard, very vulnerable. It was an ego check. Hardest thing I think that I may have ever had to do was reach out to people. And so some of the first people we reached out to, I know I reached out to a couple of brothers just to have a conversation about where we were. They've always been very astute about kind of business and that kind of thing. And so one, to admit to family that you're in that position was incredibly hard. That was number one. And then there were some other key people that we had to reach out to that could help us. There was everything from clients to one that actually helped us on the financial side. We were very fortunate here in Vermont to have a very specific financial partner who was also a client, which, by the way, anytime that the one golden rule is never tell your client if your business is struggling, because they will turn the other way. In this case, and I remember this day, this was how hard this was. I was at an event with family and a bunch of friends, and I was helping to set up this event, and I was putting on a real brave face and smiling. Everyone knows me as this happy-go-lucky guy, but then it was a Saturday, and I had to go send this email to our contact on the client side for this financial group. And I remember going to the car after setup was done. I sat in the car, pulled out my cell phone, and began to type this very long email. And I remember making the case about how much we've done in the community and that now we were the ones needing help. And I hit send. And I remember talking to you, Bryan, and I said, it's done, it's sent. And we had a really brief conversation because you were about to get on a call as well, and I think we had a bunch of different conference calls going.
Yeah.
And I began to bawl. I was sitting in this car in this parking lot, absolutely bawling. I was a mess, and I had to clean myself up. I had to make sure I was right and didn't look like I was bawling to get back into the event, to then, again, put on my brave face. Here's what helped me put on that brave face. And this, I think, when this happened, everything changed. Before I got out of the car, my phone dinged, and it was a response from my client. And the simple words, "We got you."
Sorry. This is hard. The
This
I remember
this
us
organization,
talking.
by the way, really quickly, this organization, and you may have them in your in your area as well, but they are a place where you can basically you can invest in them. But what they like to do with the money is invest locally in local companies and businesses that are making impact in the community. And we'll go into more detail. Perhaps when we do the other episode, we'll go into a little more detail of what we had to do to, because video production companies and most creative firms are not usually on the list of companies that they're looking to support. Usually it's things about housing and food security and
Working landscapes, things of that
yeah,
nature.
small businesses for underrepresented communities, things like that. But we were able to state the case of why we were important to the community, and we laid a total picture of all that we had done in the community and all that we're going to continue to do in the community. And we were able to kind of come to terms with that. And there's a lot to it. It's not that simple.
There's a lot to it. There's a lot
There
to
was
it.
there was a lot of work and a lot
But
of stuff going
I
on.
think
But
that's why it's so emotional. You reach out, and this is part of we're not talking long term yet, but actually this does lead to long term, because you get those relationships going, and suddenly the lesson you start to pull from it is you have to be open, good, bad, or indifferent. There is literally no reason. They've never had anybody like us in their portfolio. There is no reason they should have come to us. But the proof was who we were, what we did. And here's the thing. If we didn't have that trust that they weren't going to hurt us with our own pain, this would never have happened. And the fact that they reached out literally within seconds on a weekend and were like, we got you, was the beginning of sunlight. It's the only way to describe it. And it is emotional. I am so thankful that organization exists. I'm thankful for everybody who helped us along the way. But the biggest single thing about your long term also applies to maybe one of the first lessons you need to learn. You have to be open. If you keep it close to the chest, specifically when you're in crisis, you are done. And we've seen a number of businesses go out that we wished had this conversation before they did. That's also part of the reason why we're here, because you don't know where the help's coming from. If you've done the job from beginning to end, always doing it the right way, it's amazing where the support comes from.
it's amazing.
So,
And you got to be open to the connections that you have. We reached out to a lot of family members who either had successful businesses or knew people or friends who really knew marketing and all that. So what was happening was this amazing. You sit there, and we had been in business at that point for 14 years. So 14 years we had been in business. Everything was going great until that moment. So 14 years of amazing clients, of great projects, ups and downs, the whole nine, and of steady growth, and then you hit this moment. If you're brand new, it's a little bit tougher to know who your connections are, but when you've been in business for a while, you sometimes lose sight of the depth of the networking that you actually have. And what we experienced was we thought we were alone. We'd been doing all this stuff to help others, and now when we needed help, did we have anybody who was going to help us? And the answer was yes. It was like overwhelming, the amount. Like Bryan was having calls with people that it was just two of them having conversations about things, about some quick things you could do on the marketing front or the sales front. Somebody in Bryan's network who connected us with their insanely talented accountant who looked at our books fully and said, oh yeah, these guys, yeah, if they make 2 or 3 changes, they are golden. Like, just hearing that type of stuff and having those connections come out in force for us was massive. So you have a network. You got to use it.
You do, and you have to think differently. Let's go back to the reframe metaphor. We've all been thinking about, where do you go to get your financing? Where do you go to get your financing? Are they being helpful? Is your community bank really a community bank? Is any bank really going to help the small business? To put it bluntly, after you've hit a certain point, the answer is no. And until you hit another point, the answer is no. So you have to look at finances differently and look at it as the human capital and the human resources of goodwill that you've already put out there. Because I got to tell you, we also approached the banks, and it was, well, if.
Right.
You're so happy to lend money until it's needed. Interesting.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I'm putting that out there because it's
Yeah.
a huge reframe. It's a huge reframe.
It is. And I think that's part of the lessons that one of the first lessons you learn is number one. And also it also helps us look at perspective on their end as well is, they always say the best time to get a line of credit is when you don't need it. When you're in a strong position, that's the time to get that line of credit. So it's in place for when you do need it. We try to operate even without it and just not even use them. But at the same time, we understand the position that banks and community banks are in, credit unions. We know the position that they're in. They have to mitigate risk as best as possible. And if somebody walks in saying, hey, we're about to close our doors, that's a risk. And so we tried it, and we tried to go that route, and it wasn't going to work. And fortunately for us, there was a solution that was ready to listen to us and heard our case and then put us through the process to make this possible. And I will say I am grateful for the challenge, the difficulty from the moment we contacted them to actually securing financing for our business. There was some very hard work and some very hard questions we had to answer for them to make the case to say yes for us. And I'm grateful for that, 2 week, or actually it was more like a 2-month process.
We were in the middle of month number 1, or towards the end of month number 1, where we're like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of work to be done. And I just got to put it out there. The reason I brought up the banks is we get it. And having been there, we absolutely get it. But the reason I bring up the banks is your first instinct is to go where the money is.
Yeah.
And realistically, if you do that, you're going to walk out despairing and depressed. You have to look at other resources, and you have to change the way you think about what those resources look like. And that's all.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to admonish their
No,
perspective.
not at all.
It was more,
not at all.
Yeah,
no, I think it's
So-
a good point. It's a good point to bring up on both sides. I think all of it is important because I think we have an idea of what banks are from the commercials, but the reality of it all is this. And I think one of the things is also we were fortunate to have an organization like this who could help us, I'd say quickly, but it was a good 2-month process, probably 2.5 months by the time everything really resolved itself. There was a lot of work to do, but we were grateful for it. And also what they had to put us through the exercises we had to go through. But then there are also little fixes that you can do. And that's one of the things we'll talk about in one of the future episodes in the next few weeks, is there are some things you can do almost immediately in order to help your cash flow situation, things that you can do very, very locally with your existing clients, and even trying to get new clients. There are some things it's like rapid response things that you can do to get some cash in, some video projects that you can do very quickly and cheaply for them just to get the cash in. So we're going to be talking a lot about that kind of stuff. And we're going to be breaking this down over multiple episodes because that's why we're here. We're talking about not only the things that we learned during the crisis, but the things that we learned during our journey from then to now, and the things that we've now put in place, and the new things that we're putting into place moving forward to help bulletproof who we are and to continue to grow. We're not done growing. We're all about continuous growth here. So all of those things are important. And Bryan, I want to touch a little bit about why we even launched Reframe, and it has to do with all of those things, all the things that we've put into place. And you're gonna see and hear certain things on it, but we basically, just to give everyone an idea of what this is. So we're calling it the Great Reframe. This is one podcast from that series, but we have 4 areas that we were, I think, lacking in, that we had to shore up, and we had to build ourselves up in those skills within those. And we broke them down as we really studied what it is that got us from there to here. There were 4 key areas. There was mindset, so this idea of continuous learning and how we approach some of the limiting beliefs and maybe self-doubt, imposter syndrome, those types of things. There's all these mindset things that we had to get over to move into that next phase. There's mission, which is everything about culture and community and what kind of clients are you working with, what's that relationship like with clients, who don't you want to work with. There's all these things about that. Money, which is the big one, right? Having a little bit of knowledge around money, and we're going to offer up some books that are actually great places to start to really get some of that financial literacy going, but also how to protect your cash flow and use it the right way with subscriptions and all that stuff. And then the final one is motion, which is like putting in your systems and setting the right goals and moving and actually getting things done and doing them efficiently. So, you know, mindset, mission, money, and motion are the 4 elements that make up Reframe. We call it the 4 M's, but we'll use Reframe. That's the easiest way to kind of remember it. But so we're going to be using that a lot throughout all of these episodes, and we hope you join us for this journey, because we're excited to tell this, and we're hoping to help a lot of people by sharing everything that we've been through. But
I'd like to end with just one thing.
Yeah.
The people around you are maybe the most important people. I don't care whether it's your home family, your work family, the vendors you work with. These are the most important people in your life, and they always will be. Remember, you owe your employees a good experience. They don't owe you one. If you get one in return, that's awesome. But if you start by thinking they owe you something for the struggles you're going through, you're already destined to fail, and you really shouldn't be tuning in. And I know that sounds really harsh, but the reality is this. These are the people that in good times as well as bad will see you through to the other side, as long as you keep an eye out for them. And when I look at who we are, where we came from, and what lessons we have to share here, that's what stands out in my mind. The people we took care of, even when it was hard to take care of them. They didn't owe us anything in return, but it was nice to see them there for us when we needed it.
Yeah.
So
the good you put out, the good that you put out is the good that comes back to you, and it comes back to you heavily. And we were fortunate beneficiaries of that. And just amazing. So we're gonna wrap there. I think there's been a lot of great stuff that we covered in this episode. Look for the next ones. We're going to be jumping into a lot of different topics. We're going to be talking about AI, because there's a little bit of an existential crisis when it comes to video producers and filmmakers out there, and we got to face it head on and talk about how we're dealing with that. Again, we're going to be talking about, I'm so looking forward to that episode where we talk about sort of that one moment when you're in a real dire spot and how you can potentially help to get yourself out of it with some really quick tactics that you can try. But then moving forward, it's really about growth. It's really about really starting to look at all of the different ways that you're approaching all parts of life that kind of come together to make you the filmmaker that you are, the storyteller that you are, the video producer, or really any creative, because that's all important. You have to sort of look at the full picture and understand who you are and what you're offering and what you're bringing to the table, and how you can help to kind of raise all the ships around you. And that's what Reframe is all about, and what this show, Reframe, How Not to F Up Your Business, aims to do. So thank you all for joining us. A couple of quick things. Please subscribe. We would love to see you subscribe. Leave your comments down below. We want to hear all of your questions, or tell us how we did. Could we do better? Is there something that you'd love to hear about on the show? Let us know down in the comments. Click the like. Leave a review for us, please. And we'll see you here on the next one.
Stay safe, stay healthy, folks.